What's up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Keeping Up with the Commanders. I'm your host, Mason Kenahan. We're back for another episode and another week breaking down Washington Commanders football. Missed last week. I was in Europe. I was on a trip. I'm back now, and we're back in the swing of things. We are about 1 month and I think 3 days or 4 days out from Washington, from the NFL draft in Detroit. And I mean, we're looking at things now. Today, we're going to go over a bunch of NFL draft stuff. Today, we've got breaking down Matt Miller's 7-round mock draft. We're going to be looking at every single pick he made for the Washington Commanders. Matt Miller, one of the lead draft analysts at ESPN. Then we're going to go over a couple signings the Washington Commanders made in the last 2 weeks that I did not talk about in the pod 2 weeks ago. We're going to be going over a weekly mock draft that I usually do every week. This one, as well, is an article I did for TWSN, the Right Way Sports Network. So you can read that as well. That link will be in the description of this podcast. If you want to read my full thoughts on it, we're going to go down pick by pick anyways and break down each pick a little bit as well, because it got a little spicy. It got a little spicy in that mock draft. That's all I'm going to say. And then after that, we're going to go into what's next. What's the schedule going to be looking like for the next few weeks as we lead up to the NFL draft at the end of this month. It's draft month. I'm excited. We're finally here. It's draft month. The NFL draft happens this month in 24 days, April 25th. The countdown is on. So I guess it was 3 weeks, not 4 weeks. 3 weeks until the NFL draft. So yeah, let's just jump right into it. We'll start with Matt Miller's 7-round mock draft. He did this on ESPN, I believe. It was like earlier this week, 5-6 days ago. We'll start at pick number 2. He goes ahead and selects Jayden Daniels, the quarterback out of LSU. Really seems to be one of two choices right now for the Washington Commanders. There's been some smoke about J.J. McCarthy potentially being the selection. Most NFL executives believe, based on Adam Peters' past selections, that he'll go with J.J. McCarthy number 2. I think that's just a smokescreen. I don't think that's actually going to happen. But I think it's going to be Drake May or it's going to be Jayden Daniels. It's going to be one of those two guys. In this mock, Matt Miller goes with Jayden Daniels. We've seen Jayden Daniels be the more popular pick among NFL draft analysts recently. Does that mean anything? We'll wait and see. But Daniels, the pick here, number 2. I've said my thoughts on this before. Daniels is my QB3. It's pretty solid at solidified as my QB3. I don't really see him jumping Drake May. I'd rather go with Drake May, but again, Jayden Daniels has become the popular pick recently. So Jayden Daniels at pick number 2. That's kind of chalk. And then from there, it kind of gets a little bit more interesting. Round 2, pick 36. Matt Miller goes with Darius Robinson, the edge rusher, defensive tackle out of Missouri. I have him listed, after I scouted him, I have him listed as a defensive tackle more than just an edge rusher. I just feel like his lack of speed kind of helps him more as a defensive tackle, as an interior guy, more than just on the outside. I feel like his speed was definitely hurting him there, or his lack of speed was definitely hurting him there. But I've talked about Darius Robinson on this pod before. Robinson, he was at the Senior Bowl 2 months ago, or I mean, it's been a while. 2.5 months now since, or just over 2 months since the Senior Bowl. I mean, it really feels like yesterday. Time flies by. But Darius Robinson, he had a great Senior Bowl as one of the bigger risers of the week in Mobile. I believe he was the Defensive Player of the Week for his team as well for the practices. Really great week from him going up against the tackles and the guards in Mobile. Pick 40 now for Matt Miller. He's going to go with Patrick Paul, the offensive tackle out of Houston. Patrick Paul, he's, of course, the brother of Chris Paul, current Washington Commanders guard. I talked to him about potentially pairing up with Patrick in Washington. He said it would be the dream. I talked with him when he was in Mobile watching his brother Patrick, who also was at the Senior Bowl 2 months ago, about basically potentially pairing up. When he was there, Adam Peters was there. Some of the other high executives for the Commanders were there in Mobile. He said it would really be a dream. So I mean, again, great for them. I feel like at this point, I haven't really heard that much hype around Patrick Paul. I think he could definitely be sliding past pick 40. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Washington goes by past pick 36 and pick 40. And even if Patrick Paul's on the board and he's considered the best tackle, I wouldn't be surprised if they pass on him. I would not be that surprised. I have a little bit of a lower grade on Paul. I have him as like a late 2. to early 3, somewhere around there. And I mean, he's an older prospect as well. He's been consistent for Houston over the last few years. Been one of the highest graded tackles just overall in the country. But I'm not really fully on the Patrick Paul train right now, and just the hype around him, around the NFL, and what I'm like hearing and stuff is that I think he could fall past pick 40 and maybe into the second half or the second round. So Patrick Paul, though, the selection at pick 40, I wouldn't be entirely mad if we select him there, especially if guys like Fauci, who I expect is not going to be on the board, Jordan Morgan potentially not being on the board either. So Patrick Paul here, the pick, I wouldn't be that mad at it. Pick 67 in round 3, the first third rounder of the 2 that Washington has, is going to be Adisa Isaac, the edge rusher out of Penn State. I've talked about how much I've loved Isaac before. I currently have Isaac around the same grade I have Chopper Robinson. That's how good I like Adisa Isaac. Also shows how low I am on Chopper Robinson, or lower than consensus I am on Chopper Robinson. But Adisa Isaac, I have a mid 2 on. Grabbing him at the beginning of round 3 would be a steal in my opinion. And I wouldn't be mad if Washington selected Adisa Isaac with pick 40. And getting him at pick 67, that'd be incredible. So Washington adds 2 edge rushers, Adisa Isaac and Darius Robinson, pairing them up with Dorrance Armstrong, Dante Fowler, KJ Henry, Andre Jones already at the edge rusher position. So grabbing 2 edge rushers, I feel like is not a high probability that Washington goes 2 edge rushers with their first 4 picks. But if Isaac is on the board and you already selected Robinson and Isaac's on the board at 67, there's not really a DB that you like in this range or offensive lineman you like in this range, I wouldn't really be mad at it. So if Isaac falls 67, I don't think he will, but if he does, wouldn't be mad at the selection at all. Moving on, 11 picks later to the selection that Washington got in the trade up when they traded away Sam Howell. Round 3, pick 78. This is a pick I really like. It was one of my favorite picks in this mock for Matt Miller. Kyrie Jackson, the DB out of Oregon. Jackson has been like a draft crush of mine for a little bit recently. I really like his length. He's a very long corner, and he's a big corner. And he can kind of play both corner, nickels, second safety, kind of pretty much. There's a positional versatility there for Kyrie Jackson, in my opinion. And I really, truly think that he can be a starter in the league. I don't know if he can be a true cornerback 1, the best corner on a team, but the athletic traits are there, and so far I've liked what I've seen out of Jackson. He was also at the Senior Bowl. Common theme here. We've got Darius Robinson, Patrick Paul, Adisa Isaac, Kyrie Jackson, all 4 of those guys at the Senior Bowl in Mobile in January. So common theme there. But moving on, round 4, pick 100, Matt Miller goes with Theo Johnson, the Penn State tight end, a guy that, in my opinion, you look at Brock Bowers, right? Bowers is the easy tight end 1. Jatavion Sanders is the easy tight end 2 for me. But beyond that, Theo Johnson is kind of fighting up there for my tight end 3 spot. I really like his game in the past, and in blocking as well. I think he's a good all-around tight end, and if you can bring him onto this Washington team that hasn't had sustainability at the tight end position, I feel like, I mean, you've had Logan Thomas over the Rivera era, but he's been injured for some time, and you've lacked depth. You've spent a pick on John Bates. You spent a pick on Cole Turner. Neither of those guys have been major. Like, what has John Bates done beyond been slightly above average to average blocker in the run game? That's pretty much it. Cole Turner has dealt with, I mean, he might have more concussions in his NFL career than he has catches in game. Like, it's not good. It's not good. So I feel like Washington's going to add a tight end in this draft class, and there's a few guys that I really like. Theo Johnson, Ben Simmons, if we could select a guy on day 3. And I think Johnson could be a guy that I think Adam Peters could fall in love with. And especially with this pick 100 spot, if he's on the board at pick 100, I could definitely see this being the pick here for Washington in the 4th round. So moving on to the 5th round, we got 3 selections left, 2 5th-round picks and a 7 to go. Round 5, pick 139, Isaiah Williams, the wide receiver out of Illinois. We look at Washington and their wide receiver room right now. Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, You lost Curtis Samuel. He's now a Buffalo Bill. De'Ami Brown is now your wide receiver 3, the former third-round pick out of UNC. And the big thing with him is that big reason why he got playing time was his connection with Sam Howell at UNC. They were former teammates. That was the big thing. He had his best game against the Titans, and then he's kind of just disappeared with Wentz, and then he kind of just hasn't really done anything, even with Sam Howell at quarterback. That experiment has failed pretty much. I'm pretty much off the De'Ami Brown train. Beyond Brown, like I'm gonna look at the list, the depth chart right now. I want to talk about a guy in a second that Washington just added at wide receiver, but yeah, Terry, Jahan, De'Ami, and then Jamison Crowder, Dax Milne, Kaz Allen, Mitchell Tinsley, and Bryson Tremaine, Davion Davis. Does Bryson Tremaine, Mitchell Tinsley, and Kaz Allen, two of those guys are going to be your wide receiver 4 and your wide receiver 5? Does that really move you at all? Not really. So Washington's going to need to add at least some depth at wide receiver, because right now, beyond your first 3 or 4, you've really got no one. You re-signed Jamison Crowder. Pretty sure he's going to make the team unless some other guy breaks out as a kick returner, punt returner. Because Jamison Crowder is going to be your kick returner or your punt returner unless one of these other guys breaks out as the returner, like Kaz Allen potentially. But beyond that, like, there's a lot of open space. And I really think they're going to add a wide receiver. I don't know if Isaiah Williams, he's kind of like a smaller guy, would be a good replacement for Curtis Samuel. He's 5'10". He had some great games. You can do a little bit in the run game as well. Definitely want to get him out in open space. Not sure if I entirely love this pick. I just don't really see him. I mean, I think he's kind of like a quarter of what Curtis Samuel is. So that's really it. But don't really entirely love this pick. Moving on to the next one, round 5, pick 152. Tommy Eichenberg, the linebacker out of Ohio State. I was on the Eichenberg train for a while over the kind of the course of the college football season, and then you get now to this, and he's kind of fallen off a little bit. I mean, he might have entered the 2023 NFL draft weights, and his stock has kind of fallen a little bit, even more. Kind of a mid to late day 3 guy now, with players like Trevor Wallace potentially jumping him. You have the Notre Dame guys, both of them jumping him. You have Jeremiah Trotter and some of these other names. And again, this linebacker class is pretty weak. But grabbing Eichenberg, I mean, he's a veteran guy. He has a lot of experience. But beyond that, solid in coverage, solid in pass rush too. I mean, round 5, it's not that big of a deal. I like the pick. You're good at linebacker, in my opinion. You'll see my mock later. I'm just going to say it right now. I didn't draft a linebacker because I feel like this team's good at linebacker. You have Bobby Wagner, Frankie Louvu, Jamin Davis. That's your starting 3 right there. If you go to a 3-4, which is seeming to be maybe potentially what Dan Quinn will do, you might need another guy or 2 at linebacker. But again, Eichenberg, solid middle linebacker, would be good depth for the 2024 season. And then round 7, pick 222, Dylan McMahon, the center out of NC State. McMahon, don't know. I don't know that much about him, but just going center overall in the 7th round, again, low risk, high reward situation here in the 7th round. But I'd rather focus my attention on a different position, maybe more offensive tackle. You already drafted Patrick Paul, but maybe more of a guard. McMahon, I guess, can play guard a little bit, but I mean, I'm not that much of a big fan of this pick either. So I love the first few picks. I love the first 5 or 6, but the round 5 and round 7 picks, I'm not that huge of a fan of. If I had to rank these picks, I'd probably go Adisa Isaac at number 1. I like the value there. Then Theo Johnson at 100. Then I'd go Kyrie Jackson at 78. Jane Daniels at pick 2. Darius Robinson at 36. Patrick Paul at 40. And then the other 3, you can just put in whatever order you want. But that's probably my thoughts. If I had to give this mock a grade from Matt Miller, I'd probably give it like a B- to a B, somewhere around there. I like the Adisa Isaac pick. I like the Kyrie Jackson pick. I like the Theo Johnson pick. You were going to go quarterback in number 2 anyways, so I'm not really worried about that if it's Jane Daniels or Drake May. But the other picks are what makes your team from like a good team to a great team. It's these day 3 picks, and in my opinion, he missed on all of them. So that's just my thoughts. Yeah, that's my thoughts on the mock. Probably B- to B in my opinion. Not that big of a fan. I feel like the ordering of what positions when we prioritized when could be mixed up a little bit, and it could be better. So that's my overall thoughts on the Matt Miller stuff. Going on to Olamide Zaccheaus. The Washington Commanders have signed former Philadelphia Eagles and Atlanta Falcons wide receiver Olamide Zaccheaus. I believe to a 1-year deal. Maybe it was 2 years, but overall, Zaccheaus coming in from Philadelphia. He spent 4 years, 4 years in Atlanta. Last season in Philadelphia, had his best season in his last year, that 2022 year in Atlanta. He had 40 catches on 61 targets for 533 yards and 3 touchdowns, easily his best year. He had 400 yards in his 2021 year, but then last year didn't really get that much playing time, only 10 catches for 164 yards and 2 touchdowns for Philadelphia last year. So you look at the Curtis Samuel role and what he played. Zaccheaus isn't exactly what Curtis Samuel is. Like, he's a very, very light version of Curtis Samuel, 5'8", 193. Kind of more of a shifty guy. He ran a little bit, has 4 career carries, but I mean, it's fine. It's fine. I'm not really moved. I'm not really moved by this addition as much. Still think Washington needs to target a wide receiver late or early day 4, late. Oh, sorry, not early day 4, early round 4, late day 2, somewhere around there, for Washington. So this is a case signing is all right. I'm not really that moved by it. Michael Davis, I think is a little bit interesting. Davis was a guy in that 2021-2022 season that had a great year, in my opinion. Was one of the more underrated DBs in the league. I really thought he was definitely one of the better nickels, in my opinion. But beyond that, like he hasn't been great. He was good in 2022 a little bit as well. Last year kind of struggled. He had a 56 PFF grade, 54 coverage grade, allowing 61 catches on 93 targets for over 750 yards and 9 touchdowns. He had 7 pass breakups, so allowed more touchdowns last year than he had PBUs, which is not great. Not great. So I think Michael Davis, he's a solid addition, but you already look at this DB room. You're gonna have Forbes. You're gonna have St. Juice. Beyond that, what are you going to do? You've got Forbes, St. Juice, then pretty much no one right now. So Michael Davis, he's going to make the team, in my opinion. I mean, you have what? Caillou, Blue Kelly, Noah Igbenogany, Christian Holmes, the former 7th rounder, I think. And I mean, you've got no depth. So Michael Davis, in my opinion, is going to make this team. I really think he will. But it's just going to be like a secondary start, like with like a quarterback 1 of Michael Davis and a quarterback 2 of Benjamin St. Juice, with Emmanuel Forbes and Noah Igbenogany and Tariq Castro Fields as the depth. That's got to be the worst in the league. I'm sorry, but that's got to be the worst in the league. So Washington's gonna need to do stuff. If they can't develop Emmanuel Forbes into a dominant corner this season, they're going to need to do something. They're going to need to do something at corner in the draft, and I've got an answer for that in a little bit. But that's pretty much it. So that's the signings: Zaccheaus, Michael Davis. Those are all right signings. I'm fine with them. Neither of them move the needle. I don't know if Zaccheaus will make the final roster. Davis, I'm more confident will make the final roster, but Zaccheaus, I really don't know, especially with guys like potentially Kaz Allen making the team. Kaz Allen could play a similar role as Zaccheaus would, so I'm not entirely convinced he'll make it. Moving on now to something I've been cooking up for a little bit. My post-free agency Washington Commanders mock draft, the weekly mock this week. Of course, if you want to read the entire thing, let me check, all like 1,000 something words of it, It's not that long. It's on twsn.net. The Right Way Sports Network. It was out this morning at like 6:40. I don't know. It should be out now. It should be out as you're listening to this. But let's go pick by pick. This is a pretty spicy mock. We'll go round one. Pick one. This has been my selection all year. It's going to remain my selection all year. I'm just going to say that right now. It's going to be Drake May, UNC quarterback. I've talked about May before. His ability is big frame. He's got the ability. He might not have the exact mobility as a guy like Jane Daniels, but he can still roll out there. He can still break tackles in space. He's got all the arm. He's got the arm talent. He can make any throw on the field. I've seen him do it from many different arm slots. So, I mean, that's what kind of separates him from guys like Daniels and McCarthy, in my opinion. It's Drake May, pick 2. I think this will ultimately end up being the pick, but we'll have to wait and see come draft day. So Drake May, I think, ultimately will be the pick, but of course, right now the favorite seems to be Jane Daniels. So moving on, this is where things get spicy. We've got to trade. The Commanders are receiving pick number 18. They are trading back into the first round. Pick number 18. They're getting pick 18 from the Los Angeles Rams for pick 36, pick 67, and a 2025 Washington second round pick. That's going to do it. That's going to do it right there. Pick 18 for 36, 67, and a 2025 second round pick for the Washington Commanders. I think that's a solid package to get in a trade for the 18th pick to move up. What is it? 18 spots, I think. Yeah, to move up 18 spots. I really think Adam Peters is eyeing something like this to trade back up into the first round. 18 might be a little bit too high, but if a guy like Troy Fautanu or Marius Mims falls into the later of the first round, I think Adam Peters, no hesitation, will be calling teams to potentially trade back into the first round. In this situation, they're going to select Marius Mims, the offensive tackle out of Georgia. I like this selection a lot. I think Mims, we've seen the talent that he has, the athleticism. He's so massive, 6'7", 340. We saw him dominate at the scouting combine. We've seen him dominate when he's on the field. He looks like one of the best offensive tackles in the country when he's on the field at Georgia over the last 2 years. He's been the right tackle for those championship runs. And now, if the weakness for Mims, he's got the arm length, he's got the size, he can move, is going to be, can he stay on the field? Because he had an ankle injury last year. He's only started, I believe, 6 games in his college career. Yet he's still considered to be a first-round pick, which is absolutely crazy. Shows the amount of potential this guy has. But if he can stay healthy, he's going to be a franchise right tackle in the league, and I think he can be the franchise right tackle for the Washington Commanders. The Commanders currently have Andrew Wiley at right tackle. I feel like if you draft a guy like Marius Mims, he's going to come in and he's going to be like the right tackle of the future. He's not going to start week 1. I think that's going to be Wiley. You have Wiley start a few games. Once Wiley starts struggling again, then you replace him with Mims, see what Mims got, or maybe put Mims in for some packages. I really think Mims could be the future if he just can stay healthy, and I think he can. So trading back up into the first round, you still keep pick number 40 in this situation. You give up a second rounder next year, but you still keep pick 40. Marius Mims, pick number 18. 2 first-round picks for the Washington Commanders in this one. Drake May and Marius Mims. Now, round 2, pick number 40, Jatavion Sanders, the tight end out of Texas. I mentioned it before. Sanders is my tight end 2 in this class. He's most people's tight ends 2 in this class. He's racked up over 1,400 yards and 14 touchdowns. Oh, no, sorry. Wrong. I read the wrong thing. You look at the tight ends that Rivera had. I mentioned Logan Thomas and kind of his stretch. Thomas had 1,400 yards and 14 touchdowns during his time. One of the first moves that Peters made as the GM of the Commanders was releasing Thomas, and now that opened up kind of a hole. You signed Zaccheaus, but again, Ertz is 32, I believe, 33. He's not moving like he used to. You know, he's not the Eagles Zaccheaus from the Carson Wentz days back in Philadelphia. So he's not that guy anymore. I think Sanders could be the tight end 1 on this team. You still have Ertz, and then you still have Bates maybe or Turner, but I mean, I think they're going to add a tight end, and they're not going to have 4 tight ends on the final roster. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes. Is it going to be Ertz? Is it going to be the tight end they draft? They're going to keep probably three tight ends, and one of Zach Ertz, the tight end they draft, Cole Turner, John Bates, and Armani Rogers. 2 of those guys are going to get cut. We got to remember about Armani Rogers because he looked like the most athletic tight end Washington has had in years before tearing his ACL in training or in OTAs or whatever. So we got to remember he's coming back. So Ja'Tavion Sanders in the second round, pick number 40. So far, Drake May at pick 2, pick 18, trading up to get Marius Mims, and pick 40, Ja'Tavion Sanders. This is a great mock, in my opinion, so far. Moving on, pick number 76, Austin Booker, the edge rusher out of Kansas. Booker has been a guy on my radar for a little bit. He had a really solid Senior Bowl. I liked what I saw of him. He's active with his hands. I liked him on film as well. He's been kind of one of the sleepers in the last few months. Some guys have noticed him and kind of put him up their boards, but I feel like he's been a little bit of a sleeper. I kind of consider him like an early round 3 selection, which is kind of the selection here for Washington. Is kind of middle of round 3 at pick 76. But Booker brings more depth to this edge rusher position that currently has Dorrance Armstrong, Dante Fowler, who else? KJ Henry and Andre Jones. That's kind of the 4 guys right now at edge rusher. Austin Booker will come in and immediately be in the rotation there. So I like this selection at pick 76. Pick number 100 is a fan favorite. I have not seen this much Cam Hart hype probably ever. And the amount of Cam Hart hype that I've seen on Twitter or X or whatever from the Commanders fan base in the last few weeks has been pretty crazy. Hart at 6'2", just over 200 pounds. I mean, there's been reports that the Commanders have met with Hart or are going to meet with Hart with a formal meeting before the NFL draft. He's on their radar, and I really think Hart could be someone that Washington ends up drafting early day 3 if he's there. Pick number 100 later on in day 3 here in round 4. I think Hart could be a selection. It adds to the secondary. You got Forbes, you got St. Juice. Forbes is a smaller guy. Hart brings kind of a bigger corner to this room. You look at Kyrie Jackson and Matt Miller's draft. Same thing, a bigger guy to a DB room that's kind of tiny right now beyond St. Juice. So I like this Cam Hart selection a lot. He's pretty raw, but he's also really electric. He had a lot. I mean, he might have led the second, led all the cornerbacks in Mobile in pass breakups. He had multiple interceptions within the first 2 days in Mobile as well. He had a great Senior Bowl when I was there in Mobile. Round 5, pick 130. We're going another defensive back and another corner. Kalen King out of Penn State, another Senior Bowl guy. We looked at King this time last year, and King was almost a first-round lock to be he's almost a first-round lock in the 2024 NFL Draft this time last year. But after his 2023 season, he kind of struggled a little bit. And now, I mean, he didn't struggle a little bit. He struggled mightily against some of the top competition, and it's kind of hurt his draft stock a lot to a point where he's like a day 3 guy, like almost a day 3 lock instead of a first-round lock like he was at this time last year. So Kalen King has kind of hurt his draft stock a lot, but still drafting him in round 5 here. I think this is kind of a low-risk, high-reward situation for Washington. You add Cam Hart, you add Kalen King, 2 bigger guys at corner. I really like a lot, so wouldn't be mad at either of those selections. Boost the secondary a little bit. And then round 5, pick 152, Zach Zinter. It's been a minute since I went to the offensive line because the only offensive lineman we drafted is Marius Mims. But round 5, Zach Zinter, the guard out of Michigan. Zinter has been one of the most consistent guards in the nation since or up until tearing his ACL against Ohio State this year. Zinter should be ready, I believe, for the beginning of the season, maybe if not like the first half of the season with that torn ACL. Oh, I wouldn't mind. I feel like this could be an Andrew Voorhees situation for for Washington. We saw the Ravens kind of draft and stash Andrew Voorhees after he tore his ACL at the NFL Combine. He was out for the 2022 or 2023 season, and then now they have a guy who was considered a potential day 2 selection, and they got him in the 7th round because he tore his ACL. So Zach Zinter in the 5th round could be a similar situation for Washington, grabbing a guy later on because an injury has hurt his draft stock, but a player whose talent is really worth higher than where they were drafted. So Zach Zinter in the 5th round, and then in the 7th, Delmar Glaze out of Maryland, the offensive tackle. He can play guard as well. Glaze, I feel like, could be someone that's fighting for a final roster spot, more of a practice squad guy, but fighting for a roster spot with players like Braden Daniels, who I feel like we've kind of just forgot about. A former 4th-round pick just last year, was placed on injured reserve at the beginning of the year. Kind of redshirted his first season in the league, but it's going to be a battle between him, maybe Glaze if we get him in if we get him in the 7th round, and some other guys, some other veterans maybe for those final offensive lineman spots on the final roster. So looking back at this entire thing, Drake May in the 1st round, Amarius Mims in the 1st round as well, trading back up to pick 18. You've got Jatavion Sanders, so you've got help at tight end. You've got help at edge rusher with Austin Booker, spending a premium pick there. You've got help in the secondary, Cam Hart, Kalen King, and then more offensive line help. You're drafting 3 offensive linemen still, Zach Zinter and Delmar Glaze in round 5 and in round 7. 2 great players, in my opinion, that can potentially be major players on a winning team. So that's my mock. I feel like this is one of my best mocks in a minute for Washington, especially being able to trade up for Amarius Mims. I think could be huge. I think Adam Peters would definitely be looking to use all that draft capital he has in the 2nd and 3rd round to trade up back into the 1st round. I think that's definitely a massive possibility for Washington. We'll just have to wait and see how the board falls, because if we can get a guy like Mims, I mean, 18 might be a little bit rich for a trade up for Amarius Mims, but there's a lot of teams in the early 20s that need a offensive lineman. And guys like Fauci, guys like Mims, guys like Latham, they're going to go off the board pretty early, or earlier than expected maybe, and that could potentially set Washington back and not actually be able to trade up for a guy like Mims or Latham or who would I say, Fauci. So that's my weekly mock. But beyond that, that's pretty much it for this episode of Keeping Up with the Commanders. What's next? We've got 3 weeks until the NFL draft. We're going to be having guests on maybe next week's. But we're definitely going to have at least one more guest on before the NFL draft on the 25th. We've got next week's pod. You know what? Next week's pod, we're going to do my top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL draft and be breaking down each one of them. We'll do that next week. And then that's on the 8th, I think. And then the 15th will be, I don't know, it'll be something. Maybe my final Commanders mock draft on the 15th. And then the 22nd, of course, my projected 1st round for basically the special. The Keeping Up with the Commanders NFL draft special, where I'm going to be going over the entire 1st round I'm going to be going over pick by pick, 1 through 32, every single selection. You know what? 8 or 15 on April 8th or April 15th, one of those pods, we'll do a collab mock with someone. We'll do a collab mock. I think that's going to go well. So the 22nd will be the NFL draft special to kick off draft week, and then we're going to have on the 29th breaking down the entire Commanders draft class. That'll be a fun episode as well. So that'll be it for this week's episode of Keeping Up with the Commanders. I hope you guys have a great week. See you guys in the next one. Peace.